That is Christ's grace. He demonstrated that to me. In that moment of time, he demonstrated what Christ is. He wanted his brothers to make sure they were taken care of before he was. And if we had that in our hearts all the time, I mean, we have it sometimes. We're good people. I know that. We're Christians. We love each other. But if we had that demonstration all the time, the world would be different. The world would be different. So I just, I was honored, and I mean, I've had so much support here. You guys praying, and you know, it was an amazing experience. And I urge anyone to go, because it'll change you, who you are, and what your perspectives are, and you get to see more of God. And there was some really exciting stuff that happened there, and I love all that stuff. And there were so many saved, and I'll let others talk about that. But it was really life changing. It really was. It really was. So that's what I have. God bless you. You.
Yeah.
You're going to share some of the statistics you've got.
What?
You have some of the statistics.
I have
too.
some statistics, yeah.
You don't have to stand up if you don't want to.
I don't.
No.
Thank you.
I think she has to.
Oh, if we want to get her on camera, we do.
Yeah,
That's
that's
right.
right.
She's on camera. Is she?
She's got me.
Okay, good.
So yeah, like Diego said, it was very life-changing. The biggest thing for me was, you guys know the evangelist didn't show up. You know, as Sharon liked to say, the man never came, because she has a story about that besides this time. But, it was like, the evangelist isn't coming. Like, what are we supposed to do? And then Mike puts out this little poster that, all these people coming from the United States, and they're here for a crusade, and I'm like, why is my picture there? Because, are you kidding me right now? And then we get to the first service, and they're all in there already. They're praising God. They must have been there for hours already. And we're like in Mike's office in the back room, and like we get ushered in. It's like, it just was surreal to me that to get like ushered into this room, and these people are waiting for us to come. And who am I, Really? Like, you're excited because I'm here? Like, okay. And the first thing that happened when we walked in the room that night was, first there was kids in front of us worshiping God, no taller than this, on their knees, tears running down their face, raising their hands to God, like, and not tired. They were there already for 2 hours. They just went all night dancing. But this little kid, same size, came over, right, to me and Diego, and he put his hands on our heads. We were sitting down. He put his hands on our heads, and he just started praying. I was like, floored. Because like I said, the whole time really, my experience was like, who am I? Like, they think I'm somebody, and I'm nothing. Without God, I'm nothing,
Yeah.
I felt like I had nothing to offer, but he did, and he used us, and it was very humbling to be used by him. I didn't have a lot of words to share with everybody. Most of what I did was just pray and be there and love the kids and hand out food, like he said, and whatever they told me to do, I did. And at the end, one morning, and I was sick when I was there. I had the strength to do what I went out to do, but when I went back to the hotel, I was exhausted, and I just slept. And it was my task to write notes about everything, and unfortunately, because of that, I did write a lot of things, but I didn't write a lot of things either, as far as statistics and that kind of thing. But at the end of it, I remember I was just like, God, you know what? Like, really, what was the purpose of me coming? You know, like, this is, Mike has a well-oiled machine going on over there. I mean, it's pretty amazing. He shows up and the kids are like, ah, and, you know, he hands out the food and they know who he is, and they're doing it, you know, they're living it. But God just like said, you know, he just gave me a vision, or I don't even know what to call it, of just that, you know, you're enough. You were enough. And more than that, I can't even express what he showed me that last day we were there. But it really was life-changing, and as I knew it would be, but I couldn't imagine the extent of it. I mean, I heard it was going to be life-changing. I knew people who went on missions trips and God changed their life, but it was just more than all of that. It was amazing. And one of the things that we got to do was one of the candidates for president, when they vote again, came to the church, and she wanted to talk to us. And I mean, it was just like, she, like her too, she was like, you know, we were something, you know. You're running for president, you know, you're gonna change things here. She'll be the first woman president if she wins. But you know, it was just that,
Christian
like,
woman
just
too.
Christian woman. But it was just that him just showing up, God just showing up, and you know, just doing what he does. That was just so amazing. And she gave us all gifts, like it was just, there was just so many things like that. It just blew me away. But we had there were over 7,000 people while we were there that we know accepted the Lord. That was from people who came forward in church, and the meetings were broadcast. So Pastor Mike started a bunch of churches in a bunch of different places. They come in and they get saved, and he teaches them, and they go out and they start churches. So all over Kenya, there's tons of them. And he doesn't remain the pastor where he has the video and they see it all the time. They have their own meetings. They have, you know, they each have their own churches. But for this occasion, they did have video screens. So many churches got to see the services. And on top of that, it was broadcast on the radio all over Kenya. And not only Kenya, but all over Africa, other parts of the continent. We don't even know all the places. We don't. I mean, I think Mike would rattle them off. I didn't know what the names of them were, but so 7,000 is people who called the radio station or told the pastor in the church they were in, or it was also broadcast in the prisons. And except for one prison, and then they were mad, right? And they wanted it, and then they got it afterward, right? They were like, "Why isn't it we need this in our prison too?" And guards getting saved, and politicians getting saved, and I mean, it was just like a tidal wave, you know. It was very, very cool. It was to be part of it. I have some statistics. Like I said, I didn't do. I wish I did more of my notes, but the other number was that 3.4 million people heard the word while we were there, in some place of some kind of a way. So it wasn't just, you know, this little church. I mean, we were supposed to be in a crusade grounds. I don't even know what that looks like. Big stadium kind of thing. And we weren't. We were only in, the little church, in Mike's little church, which
Well,
isn't
it's
that
not
little.
little.
It's not little. But I mean, it's not 3.4 million people.
Right.
And it's not 7,000 people, It was not that big, but so many people were reached anyway. So God had his hand on it, even though Pat and Dale weren't able to join us, it was as if, because God was in charge.
Sure.
And the fivefold ministry was amazing. I mean, it was like Diego said, we had meetings in the morning with breakfast meetings. Lots of times before Mike even got there, we all sat down and had breakfast, and we would just be talking and sharing, and what the Lord was speaking, and what we were experiencing, and they would get up. Pastor Mike would say, "Okay, tonight, this group is coming, and I want you, and you to speak." And they would get up, and they didn't talk about what they were going to talk. He didn't tell them what to preach. He just said, whatever, get up, and and they got up, and it was like they rehearsed it, the words that God gave them. They just went along with each other, and one had a word for somebody, and then then there was prayer and people running up to the altar. I mean, it was just. One woman we heard was listening in the hospital, and she had IVs in her arms, and she pulled them out, and she went home. She said, "I don't need this anymore." She was listening on the radio, I was like, what? We prayed for a bunch of kids that were deaf, right? They had a deaf school, and their teacher brought them. And I mean, just receiving from God, just, wanting to hear a couple of the deaf people, their ears were open, but they didn't know how to speak because they didn't know how to speak before, so they had to learn that. And I think it was the teacher, he said, right, got some kind of language in his head that wasn't a language that he knew.
Coming up to the teacher and asking him about.
Oh, the kids
couple
were.
Kids, yeah.
Okay, that they got a language in their head that they didn't know what the language was. So, I mean, obviously they got tongues without
Right.
realizing what it was. And Diego and Pastor Mike, they had a water baptism
Well,
service.
And Robert and.
Yeah, a bunch of them, yeah.
Who's the singer? I forget his name. The other worshiper, short strap guy.
Not Lucas, the other one.
Yeah,
I don't remember his name.
Mm.
But so they all did, 4 of them baptized. They had over 300 people, and they had to.
We had 350.
And they had to turn people away because more people
Over
wanted
300 were turned away.
to do it, but there was just no time.
That was Pastor Clarkson.
They had to rent
Huh?
a
Pastor
hotel
Clarkson.
pool.
Was the short guy in the
Oh, yeah,
water?
Clarkson, yeah, yes, that's it.
They had to rent a hotel pool because doing it in the service was not feasible. It was just not gonna get done. And I mean, people were going down and coming up speaking in tongues and coming back over. That we were sitting on the side, the women, and coming back over and getting a word from God and getting prayed for again. It was amazing. It really was amazing. I don't know a lot of the other salvations I have were more individual things. Oh, we got the one time, the first time we went to a village and we went to see the chief. The chief got saved because because what we prayed with him. We all sat in his little office and we prayed with him, and Harold
Right.
said, Pastor Mike said, you pray, and he prayed, and he said, "Can I give you a hug?" And he gave him a hug, and he was like, because COVID, he gave him a hug, and later on we heard that when he hugged him, he had, was it his ribs or his back or
Right.
something that he had pain in before he hugged him, and after he hugged him, he was almost afraid he was gonna hug him too hard, but the pain had left, and he
Oh,
accepted the
that's
Lord,
sad.
and they started having Bible studies in the village after that. So it's just every single place there was just something. There was just miracles. And that woman, the same village was when a woman said to us, they have huts that they live in that are made of garbage, of whatever they could find. They just make a hut. And I mean, if it's from here to where Edna and Caroline is sitting square like this, that's big. And that's what some of them had to live in. And this one woman, we're walking over to see the chief first. They told us we had to do that. She said, I want you to just come in my house. Just come sit in my house. And we went in this little hut with a little bench. And I don't even remember if there was a bed. I was like I was just blown away that she wanted to show us. She wanted to invite us into her house. And it was spotless. And she just sat down.
There's a dirt floor.
Yeah.
She sat down like this. And just like we sat next to her. She just like showed us her house. She just was like honored that we were in her house. It was like, you know, it was just very surreal. It was really just a blessing. And then we continued over to the chief and the kids. I mean, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful kids, but their hearts too, you know, so sweet. Everybody there, at that whole country, everybody is so sweet. We didn't encounter any kind of evil or any of that. I know we were shielded. Thank God Mike has his bodyguards, if you will, who just look at people and they get out of the way. So we felt very safe
That's
in
Eddie.
that way. What?
That's Eddie.
Yeah. Yeah. Except when Eddie saw the baboon, then Diego was a little afraid.
Oh.
The baboon had come into our bus, sat down on the bus. Some of us were outside of the bus. Edna was in the bus.
Oh.
He came in,
Sat
sat
down
down.
next to her and say, hey, what's up?
He sat down on one of the benches and he picked up a water bottle, unscrewed it, and was drinking it. We were like, but Eddie, who was like, you know, our brawn, was like, Diego said he looked at his face and his eyes got so big. He was like, this isn't good. We think this is okay, but this is not good. And they finally got him out of the bus. But and there's animals all over the streets, everywhere, all kinds of animals. It was like unfathomable. I mean, in front of people's houses, on the highways, everywhere there's animals on the side. There's cows, there's zebra.
No, there's goats.
We saw a
sheep.
couple of zebra.
Yeah, we
But
saw
not
some.
in town.
Not
No,
in
not in town. Right, goats, sheep, and cows all over the place. There's no lawnmowers. They eat the grass.
They don't need them.
Crazy experience, but really makes you thankful to come home and know, you know, through none of our doing, we landed here. We were born here instead of over there.
Thank God.
You know, and like Edna had said, she's thankful that her descendants were smart enough to come, ancestors, right, were smart enough to come here and get away from, you know, different types of oppressions. But we really have, I mean, with all the craziness in this country, we really have the best there is out there.
That's right.
I think that's all.
She had nothing to
She
say.
had nothing to say. Oh!
Thank goodness she had nothing to say.
That was good,
God,
right?
I just gave her the word.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have something prepared or an idea, and God just
Yeah.
Completely.
All the
That's
time.
what happened to me.
yeah. Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Yes, amen. There were so many times it would have been easy to interrupt you and just
Add stuff.
add,
Yeah.
yes, right, you know. 'Cause of course, Pat and I have both been there a number of times now, and we sort of know what to expect. But one of the best things that worked for our little team of 8 people was that we were expecting originally to go in July. So in the process, because Zooming had become popular, we started connecting with each other that way to prepare for July, so that we would get to know one another a little bit like that. And then the date got changed to August, and then the date got changed to September. So we had many months there that we were meeting once a week like that, and different members of the group would share a word of encouragement or a short teaching. So we had already started really functioning as a team. It was a tremendous benefit, and it just continued when we got there. Like Lynn was saying, that every morning around breakfast time there would be that time of sharing. And the first morning, it just blew my doors off. It was just amazing to see everybody had a word. Everybody had something that they were sharing with others. And you could just sense the spirit moving in our midst, and the energy, the synergy that was developed during that, just from the times that we had spent together over a computer. You know? I mean, we weren't even together for real.
No.
And like Sharon Underwood did most of the main preaching.
Right.
And Dale had said, oh, well, she'll be able to handle it. She can preach at the crusade and like that, right? Having no idea what was going to happen. And maybe we should let you all know, too, that it wasn't just that they changed their mind, decided not to come. It was that there was this political unrest between Kenya and Tanzania, and if you were in Tanzania, you couldn't come to Kenya. And if you were in Kenya, you couldn't go to Tanzania. And if they had known enough ahead of time, they might have been able to go through another African country and then come. But they didn't, you know, and the time just kept creeping up, and they changed their tickets, and they came back 2 or 3 days after we left to go there. And it was all God's plan. It was just amazing. I had sent money to rent the stadium or the crusade grounds, whatever they would turn out to be. Sometimes they're just a field somewhere. Because in the past, one of the big expenses of doing an outdoor crusade is having a stable platform and a good speaker system, so that the message gets out to the area. It draws more people into the area. It turned out, as an aside here, that one of the street boys that Mike had helped out in the past had gotten involved in music, and he went to China and got hooked up with a music group there that wanted to replace their sound equipment. And he said, well, what are you going to do with the old one? He said, well, we can give it away. And he told them about Mike. So for the cost of shipping, he got this really good sound system that he's using in the church right now. But they would have brought it out to the crusade grounds if that would have worked out that way. However, that was July. That was the end of June when the funds were sent for those grounds. And somebody owns the grounds. You have to pay the rent for the grounds, right? July didn't happen, so we moved it up to August. August didn't happen. The man has to eat. He starts renting the place out. So he has all these little shops, all these little stands and stuff that all moved into the crusade ground. And nobody thought we would really do this. I mean, don't you understand? There's a world pandemic. You guys are crazy. You're not coming here from America. We're not expecting you at all. So by the time they realized that we were actually coming and we had our tickets and everything to go, it was too late to move everybody out of the grounds. And that's why we wound up having it all in the church, which turned out to be a tremendous blessing, because Eddie, jack of all trades, not only our security person, but our video person, who's gotten very skilled with a cell phone.
Or 3.
Yes,
That's
right.
Who carried?
Frequently 2 at a time. He would put
Wow.
2 of them
Yeah.
at a time.
He
He's
was
good for it, very
crazy.
good.
For people. Yes, he's very gifted with it. So because of the experience that he's had and how good he's gotten with all of this, that was the transmission that went to the TV stations.
Wow.
Yes,
Cell phone.
yes,
Yes, cell phones.
into other churches and into
And
the
the
prisons
prisons
where these people were getting the gospel shared with them.
and the hospital.
And Sharon was not doing anything that was spectacular. It was like basic stuff, you know, it was like simple stuff.
yeah.
And the people were hungry, and they just opened their hearts and they received. And
That's
in
it.
one of the prisons, 28 of the guards accepted Christ and knelt on the ground while the prisoners laid hands on them and prayed for them because the prisoners had been saved previously.
Aw.
And it's such a testimony to them. People who wind up in prison in Kenya are generally destitute. They generally have, they don't have any hope whatsoever. They wound up there because they stole something or they did something out of their extreme need. Like the women wind up in prison because they have no way of supporting themselves anymore, so they wind up selling their bodies, and prostitution is illegal. So then if they get caught, they get sent to prison and they don't have the money to pay the fine because they didn't have the money to eat. So when they finish serving their term and they get let out, they're right back in the same spot again.
Yeah.
They, you know, because they still don't have anything, which is what the whole purpose of the Daughter of Destiny program is, which, by the way, thousands of women have gone through now since
Wow.
Mike started it a decade ago, where he used to try to rent a small place so that he could have about 10 ladies get together and he would train them at a time. At the baptism service, I hope I get back to where I started. At the baptism service, where over 300 people were baptized, 220 of them were DOD graduates
Aw.
that just graduated from that program recently. And a church in Toms River sent the funds to them to start them in their own business. They each get a loan
Yeah.
so that they can start their own business from anything you can imagine and things you've never dreamed of. That one woman, for instance, realized that a lot of the people of means who have jobs like convenience, just like we do in America. And there's a vegetable that's a lot like kale and requires washing and chopping and stripping and like that. And she went out and she bought a lot of it and got some plastic bags and cleaned it up and
Huh?
prepped it, right?
Yeah.
She has 5 people working for her now.
Wow.
So it's things like that, you
Wow.
know, it's like anywhere from somebody who has, one lady started a cleaning product business. She's doing fantastic, she's selling, so like anywhere from that to some woman who's now has a corner in town where she sits and she washes potatoes in this little bowl she's got there so she can cut them up, and she makes French fries over a wood
Wow.
fire. And she gets enough to feed her family that day. So all types of things. So whereas some organizations, and I have nothing against this, some organizations start a business that all the women that they rescue wind up working for.
Right.
They sew things or whatever it is. Whereas by doing what Mike is doing, he gives them the ability to do what they feel that they've been called to do. And it makes them very successful. He estimated that about 60% of the street children are now off the streets again because their moms have been rescued and they have their kids back home. A lot of the street children wind up on the streets because mom's a prostitute and she's trying to feed her kids. She goes to jail and nobody wants to take them in. Mike himself actually and his siblings wound up as street children because his mother and father were both doctors and they were killed in a car accident. And when his uncle took over to handle the estate, once he got the funds from the estate, he put them all out.
Oh.
So it's any number of ways that it can happen. So one of the big problems that they have right now is starvation, because people aren't able to work, and the shortage of food. Also, the government will feed the children the 5 days that they're in school, but now schools are all closed. So all of those, and there are thousands of children that his church ministers to every Saturday. It's not just in the one building that we met in, but there's other locations where they are also. Volunteers prepare all of that food. Volunteers in the church get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and prepare huge quantities of food to be able to feed these kids. But that's Saturday, that's one day. So there was a young lady who got caught up in prostitution, and she was one that responded to the invitation to do the DOD program. And Mike found out that her family was a family of means, and that she had been a bad girl in college and gotten pregnant, and dad threw her out. And that's how she wound up becoming a prostitute. So he worked to reconcile her to her family, which he was able to do. And dad decided to send her back to Norway to finish her college education. So in Norway, she met a person who was familiar with an organization there that had been sending containers of non-perishable food to Sudan. And they had discovered that much of it was being sold or wasted and wasn't really getting to the people that needed it most. And there was a container over there in the port, and they didn't know what they were gonna do with it. They didn't wanna release it to that nation again because of what had been happening. So the friend of the DOD graduate tells these people about her, and she gets to speak to them, and they call Kenya and they talk to Mike, and he's charming, and and he finds out all he has to do is pay the port tax and the transportation. I forget how much money it
It was
was.
3,000.
Well, now it is, but that one was more because it had farther to go, and I think it was $6,000 or something like
Yeah,
that.
we didn't have it, and then it happened.
So they agreed to give him this opportunity, and we were able to raise the funds to release that container of food, which, you know what a shipping container looks like. You see these trucks go by all the time. It's full of stuff, of oils and the cornmeal maize like that is a staple of theirs, and beans and things. Well, beans, whoo, they hadn't seen beans before. You know, it was like new stuff was coming to them. And the children's diets got improved on the Saturdays when they met together. So now he had a lot of stuff that he was able to deliver. And since then, they've been shipping them. I don't know if they even communicate with him that they're gonna do this till they wind up there. But they have been shipping them to a dry port, to an inland port, which is only a couple of hours away from where he is. And it's not so far to go, and it costs $300 now to transport
Praise God.
all that food.
Yeah.
So one of the pastors of Mike's church goes out every day and distributes food to the people whose children were part of the program and were getting fed in school, and now they're not getting fed anymore. It only costs $2 to feed a child all week. $2, imagine. Yeah, so lots of people are getting help that way. And one of the places that Lynn was talking about, the refugee village, is made up of, you really need to see a picture of what they live in order to understand that it's just made of sticks and a piece of plastic over it.
I have pictures if you wanna see.
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, you could do that, send it out to everybody so they get an idea of what it looks like. And the first 2 years that I went there with him, I didn't know there was anything more there than that. I didn't even know there was a chief there in that group. So I thought everybody was living like that and they had no, really, because plastic deteriorates, so it's just a matter of time and it starts to leak or whatever. So it was a surprise to me this time that we wound up going farther up into the area where the chief was in a building. He was really upscale from where the rest of those guys were. So the first time that Mike went to this place and they realized he had food, there was like mayhem broke out. And they're like fighting for it and they're, and he's doing his best. Eddie, of course, is in there, right? Trying to get them to line up and behave themselves so they all get their portion, which they all did. So the next time he came, they trusted him and they just got in line and they didn't push around anymore. So that's what you see happening now. When we went there this time, they went up to, they knew where we were going eventually, up where the chief was. So they already started walking up there and they all sat down in an orderly fashion. And different team members shared a word of encouragement with them. And one of our members, Roxanne Collins, has, in the States, she works with children's ministry and she plays guitar and sings. So she had actually learned a Kenyan song in Kenyan that they were thrilled to be able to sing it in their own native language and like that. So she did that. She did the guitar thing and the music thing, and it was very touching to them. I think it was 150 people accepted the Lord at that refugee camp that day. So maybe some of them did the last time too, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I found out the statistics are really hard to manage.
Yeah.
That it's difficult to make sure that they're 100% accurate all the time. But the children all sat down in their own little group, and at the refugee village, Lynn and Diego had let their customers know that if they had any Beanie Babies or things like that, that they would be glad to take them. I don't know how many hundreds
95
of
pounds worth of Beanie Babies.
95 pounds worth of Beanie Babies
Wow.
went to Kenya.
I'm like
We had to
those
keep it
Beanie
under
Babies,
100.
try to pick up the bag and like.
So every, like when we stopped there, they would open up the bag and take out enough for them to do and pass them around. And nobody was fighting over them or anything, they were all just sweetly waiting to receive their own.
And toothbrushes.
and like
We
that.
gave out the
Toothbrushes,
Yeah.
they probably never saw one before.
No.
Wow.
Yeah, really. And the following day, we went to another refugee village where I had never been before, and it was much more primitive than the first one.
Yeah.
There were a couple of steel shacks that were made out of corrugated steel that they had found from somewhere. But most of it was, the stick and plastic construction. And the children were so sweet. They were playing catch with the team members with their Beanie Babies, tossing them back and forth. It's amazing. You would think that small children that are not getting any schooling or anything and living in such primitive conditions wouldn't even be learning basic skills like that.